On my wedding day, my fiancé's sister grabbed the microphone and read me a list of rules. I asked 2 questions, then I burned it all down. The stem cracked before I even realized how hard I was gripping the bouquet. That sound, small, dry, final, cut through everything. Through the organ music fading in the rafters, through the shuffling of 200 guests suddenly understanding that something was very wrong, through Vanessa's amplified voice listing, item by item, the life I was apparently about to agree to live. I looked down at my flowers. One pale rose had bent at the neck, hanging now at the wrong angle, held together by a thread of green. I thought, that's what denial looks like, right before it breaks. Behind the microphone, Daniel's sister smoothed the cream-colored paper she'd produced from somewhere inside her dress and smiled at me the way someone smiles at a new employee who doesn't yet know the job description includes humiliation. Her diamond bracelet caught the chandelier light and threw it in little pieces across the church ceiling. Rule 3, she said clearly. Since Daniel is the head of the household, Emily will add his name to the deed of their home after the wedding. I heard my mother make a sound, not a word, just the intake of breath that means the person next to you has reached a limit. I did not make a sound. I turned and looked at Daniel. He was staring at the floor, not surprised, not mortified, not scrambling for a way to stop this. Prepared. That was the word my brain produced, and it landed quietly, precisely, like a key turning in a lock I'd been walking past for 18 months without noticing. I need you to understand what I had built before I tell you what they tried to take. My name is Emily Hartwell. I am 36 years old. I am a corporate fraud attorney with 12 years of experience at a firm in Chicago that handles asset recovery, financial crime litigation, and the kind of cases that get settled in conference rooms under non-disclosure agreements because the alternative is too expensive for everyone involved. I have dismantled companies. I have deposed men who believed, with everything in them, that they were untouchable. I have sat across tables from people who lied to my face and found the evidence in their own documents before they'd finished the sentence. I say this not to impress you. I say it because it matters to the story. Because the Calloway family, Daniel, his sister Vanessa, his mother Patricia, his father Gerald, made a fundamental, catastrophic error. They looked at me in my white dress and my careful makeup and my willingness to compromise on the small things, and they decided I was manageable. The house on Meridian Street was mine. I bought it 22 months before the wedding, after my first condo sold for $114,000 more than I paid for it, a number I had engineered by timing the sale to the month, something my real estate attorney called unusually disciplined, and I called what I do. The Meridian house was a 3-bedroom Victorian in a neighborhood that was quietly, steadily appreciating. I paid cash for the down payment. My name was the only name on the deed. The mortgage, the insurance, the $23,000 in kitchen and bathroom renovations, all mine. Every receipt was in a folder in my home office, organized by date and category, because that is how I organize things. Daniel had moved in 8 months before the wedding, temporarily, after his apartment lease expired. He drove my car after the lease on his expired too. He charged meals, what I had believed were client dinners, to the credit card he'd added himself to on my account, which I had permitted because I believed in the relationship we were building together. I believed that for a long time. I met Daniel Calloway at a fundraiser in October, 2.5 years ago. He was 40, good-looking in the specific way of men who've been told they're charming since boyhood, with an easy smile and a habit of leaning in when he listened that made you feel, in the moment, like the most important person in the room. He said he was in commercial real estate development. He talked about his projects with confidence I found attractive, the way you find attractive things that remind you of yourself. The first red flag came 4 months in, and I told myself it wasn't a flag at all. He asked, very casually, over dinner at my kitchen table, whether I'd ever considered consolidating accounts for simplicity's sake. He said it the way you'd mention weather. I said I preferred keeping things separate until we were married, because that was the practical, sensible answer I believed was true. He dropped it, smiled, changed the subject. I stored that moment somewhere, the way I store things, not in the front of my mind, but somewhere accessible. The second flag came 6 months later, when his mother Patricia asked about my little career for the 3rd time in a single dinner, using air quotes she seemed unaware of. And Daniel laughed along with her in a way that wasn't quite embarrassed and wasn't quite complicit, but was exactly in the middle, which is its own kind of answer. The 3rd flag came when Vanessa asked me, very sweetly, whether I'd updated my will since the engagement. I smiled and said I had an attorney who handled all of that. What I didn't say? I went home that night and called my assistant Nora first thing the next morning and asked her to start looking. Nora Chen had been my assistant for 6 years. She was 29, had a background in paralegal work and financial research, and had the particular skill set that comes from spending years adjacent to fraud cases. She knew what to look for, and she knew how to look without being seen looking. I told her what I wanted in a single sentence. Something about this family doesn't add up. Find out what. It took her 3 weeks. What she found: Daniel Calloway had not been in commercial real estate development for the past 2 years. His company, Calloway Group LLC, registered in Delaware, had filed no projects, generated no documented revenue, and maintained a single bank account that showed irregular deposits and a pattern of expenditures that mapped almost exactly onto my credit card charges. The client dinners were lunches with Vanessa and Patricia. The site visits he mentioned were on at least 4 documented occasions, days I had found found receipts for purchases in my neighborhood during hours he said he was out of town. She found two other things. The first, Gerald Calloway, Daniel's father, had a civil judgment against him from 2019, an asset transfer dispute with a former business partner that had been settled quietly and was buried under 2 layers of holding company names that took Nora 4 days to unravel. The second, Vanessa Calloway had been in 3 separate online discussions, a private Facebook group, a Reddit community for traditional family values, and a forum I'd never heard of, where she'd posted about strategies for what she called onboarding a new wife, including specific tactics for establishing household financial control early in a marriage. The posts were public. She'd used her real name. I read those posts on a Tuesday afternoon in my office with my door closed, and I sat with them for a long time. Then I called Marcus Webb. Marcus Webb was my personal attorney, separate from my firm, someone I'd retained for personal matters when I bought the Meridian house. He was 55, with 30 years in family and civil law, a reputation in Chicago legal circles for being aggressive in the most methodical way possible, and a practice in a glass-fronted office on Michigan Avenue that said, without saying anything, "This is not someone you want opposing you." I told him everything. He listened without interrupting. When I finished, he was quiet for approximately 4 seconds, a long time for Marcus. And then he said, "How long do we have before the wedding?" 11 weeks. "We can work with 11 weeks, he said. "Tell me about the prenup." I had proposed the prenup in month 3 of the engagement, framing it as something I did for all major financial decisions: clean, practical, unemotional. Daniel had agreed with the ease of a man who'd already done the math and decided the outcome suited him. His attorney, a man named Phil Deacon, a solo practitioner in Naperville, had negotiated some minor language adjustments and returned the signed document 6 weeks later. What Phil Deacon apparently hadn't told Daniel to read carefully, Marcus had built 4 specific clauses into the document that I'd never mentioned out loud. Clause 7, any attempt, prior to or during the marriage, to access or transfer marital or premarital assets without documented mutual consent constituted financial misconduct and triggered immediate dissolution terms. Clause 9, coercion during the wedding ceremony, including any public agreement or announcement regarding financial or domestic arrangements made without prior written consent of both parties, constituted grounds for prenup enforcement. Clause 11, documentation of any asset transfer attempt, digital, financial, or physical, would be admissible in any subsequent proceedings regardless of the context in which it was collected. Daniel had signed it. Phil Deacon had let him sign it. I had said nothing. "The prenup is our foundation," Marcus told me, "but we need the transfer attempt documented in real time to fully trigger Clause 7. "Understood," I said. "How confident are you it'll happen?" I thought about the conversation I'd accidentally overheard 2 weeks earlier, when Vanessa called Daniel while I was in the next room, and I heard, distinctly through the wall, the phrase, "the account number Nora found." They had been trying to find my investment account, the private one, held in my name alone, linked to a financial advisor named Dr. Sandra Osi, who managed my retirement and long-term savings portfolio. $340,000, accumulated over 12 years of careful, consistent contribution. "Very confident," I said. Marcus nodded once. "Then here's what we do." I got married, or tried to, on a Saturday in April, at St. Clement's Church on the north side, where the ceilings were high and the light came in sideways through the windows in the late afternoon, and it was, objectively, a beautiful space. I had paid for everything: the venue, the catering, the flowers, the photographer. Daniel had contributed by managing the vendor communications, which had struck me at the time as division of labor and struck me now, with the clarity of hindsight, as a way of making his presence feel financial without spending a dollar. My cybersecurity consultant, James Park, 6 years at a firm that handled corporate digital security before going independent, with a specialty in unauthorized account access, had set up the monitoring 12 days prior. Every login attempt on my investment account, my bank accounts, and my personal email would be logged with device ID, IP address, and timestamp, and James would receive an alert in real time. I told him, if anything happens between 2 and 4 this afternoon, I need the report in my hands within 30 minutes. He said, "Understood." Nora arrived at the church early. She sat in the 3rd row on the aisle side, close enough to the front to hear clearly, with her phone recording in a folder labeled Voice Memos, Work. She had a second device in her bag as backup. My mother knew something was happening, the way mothers know. She'd squeezed my hand before I walked into the vestibule and said, "Whatever you need, I'm right here," with a specificity that suggested she'd drawn her own conclusions. I loved her for not asking me to explain. I stood in the vestibule at 2:08 p.m., holding a bouquet of white roses and garden greenery, in a dress I had bought for myself and had no intention of returning, and I waited. At 2:14 p.m., my phone buzzed once in my bouquet bag. I glanced down. Alert, login attempt, OSE investment account, device ID logged, 2:14:07 p.m., report generating. I picked up my flowers. I walked down the aisle. I have thought since then about what Vanessa believed was going to happen. I think she believed she was delivering a gift, a clarification, that she was doing what someone needed to do to establish the architecture of the arrangement, that once the rules were stated plainly, I would nod, because that is what she had watched women in her family do, and what she had seen certain women do when presented with the choice between dignity and security, and she had looked at me and decided I was that kind of kind of woman. She was wrong about that, but I let her finish. Rule 1. Mandatory Sunday dinners. Emily prepares the meals. Rule 2. Holidays belong to the Calloway family. Rule 3. Deed transfer after the wedding. Rule 4. Salary into a joint account supervised by Daniel. Because, and this is the exact phrasing, I have it on audio, women become emotional about money. Rule 5. Emily serves this family now. Serves. The word landed over the church like a temperature change. I heard it go through the room. The shift in breathing. The small sounds of discomfort. The 200 people who had come to watch a wedding realizing they were watching something else entirely. I lowered the bouquet. Daniel, I said. He looked up, and I saw it. The flicker behind his eyes that wasn't guilt and wasn't love, but was the specific calculation of a man deciding how to manage a situation. Did you know about this? He opened his mouth, closed it, produced the half smile I'd once found charming and now found diagnostic. Babe, don't make a scene. It's just tradition. First answer. I turned to Vanessa. Who came up with those rules? She smiled with the confidence of someone who has never been held accountable in a room full of witnesses. We all discussed them. Daniel agreed. Second answer. Everything sharpened. Every voice. Every lifted phone camera. Every smug Calloway face in the front 2 rows. I smiled. Not because I was happy. Because for the first time since the fundraiser where we met, every single thing made perfect sense. Daniel reached for my elbow. Emily, breathe. You're embarrassing yourself. I looked at his hand until he removed it. This is exactly why structure matters, Vanessa said from the altar, with the satisfaction of someone who has won a point. She's already emotional. Patricia stood from the front pew. She was a small woman with rigid posture who had spent 18 months making pointed comments about my cute little career while eating dinner in my house. Sweetheart, she said, with theatrical warmth, every woman in this family learns her place. Daniel leaned close enough that I could feel him. His voice dropped to something low and sharp. Smile. Finish the ceremony. We'll discuss this at home. At home. His use of that word, at home, about the house I bought, the house he'd contributed nothing to, the house his family had just announced they were planning to absorb through deed transfer. Something crystallized completely. Nora appeared at the end of the aisle. She held her phone out, screen up. I read the message. All files secured. Prenup clauses active. House deed confirmed sole ownership. Bank transfer attempt documented. Device ID matches Daniel's MacBook Pro registered to home Wi-Fi. James has the full report. Timestamp, 2:14 p.m. He had tried to access my investment account. While I was standing at the altar in a wedding dress, holding flowers, listening to his sister announce that I would be cooking Sunday dinners and handing over my salary. He had been trying to get into my account at the same time. That detail, the simultaneity of it, the sheer confidence required to run both tracks at once, I will admit it took my breath for one moment. Not from shock, from something like clinical admiration, the kind you feel for a move that would have been brilliant if it had worked. I slipped off my engagement ring. What are you doing? Daniel said. Not a question. Listening, I said, for the first time. At exactly 2:14 this afternoon, I said, clearly enough for the front 10 rows to hear me. While I was preparing to walk down this aisle, someone attempted to access my private investment account using a MacBook Pro registered to the Wi-Fi network at my home address. The front row went very still. Two-factor authentication flagged the attempt on my phone. My bank logged the device ID. My cybersecurity consultant, who has been monitoring these accounts since March, already has the complete report. The device belongs to Daniel. That wasn't me, Daniel said, instantly. The speed of the denial was, itself, a kind of document. The prenuptial agreement Daniel signed 9 weeks ago, I continued, contains a clause, Clause 7, that defines any unauthorized attempt to access or transfer premarital assets as financial misconduct. It also contains Clause 9, which defines publicly announced domestic or financial arrangements made during the wedding ceremony without prior written consent as grounds for immediate enforcement. I paused. Both clauses have now been triggered. Vanessa was no longer smiling. Gerald Calloway stood from the pew. He had the bearing of a man accustomed to filling rooms. You can't prove intent. This is harassment. I don't need to prove intent in this church, I said. I need to prove it in court. And I have a MacBook Pro, a device ID, a timestamp, and a prenuptial agreement signed by your son. I turned back to the room. I think that's a reasonable start. Patricia's hand went to her mouth. Nora was recording. Her backup device was recording. The phone of approximately 40 guests was recording. I turned to the priest, who had been standing at the altar this entire time with the expression of a man who has officiated 400 weddings and never experienced anything like this. I'm so sorry for the disruption, I said. Then I faced the guests. There will be no wedding today. Anyone who brought a gift will receive it back. Anyone who still wants to eat, please enjoy the reception. I paid for it in full and the food has already been made. I set the bouquet on the altar step. I walked down the aisle. By 6:30 p.m., the locks on the Meridian house had been changed by a locksmith named Tim, who I had booked 2 days earlier because I believed in contingency planning. By 8 p.m., the movers I had also booked 2 days earlier had packed Daniel's Daniel's belongings, clothing, toiletries, the Xbox, the coffee machine he'd bought with my credit card, into 12 boxes, which they delivered to the Callaway family home in Elmhurst with a signed receipt that confirmed delivery. The joint account that Daniel had insisted we open in February, which he had been positioning as the destination for my salary, contained $23.14. I know this because I am the one who opened it, and I am the one who had decided, after a conversation with Marcus, what to put in it. $23. I thought that was about right. I sat on the kitchen floor of my house with a glass of Malbec, barefoot, dress still on, veil somewhere in the hallway, and I let the evening happen around me. My phone rang at 8:47 p.m. Daniel. I let it go to voicemail. It rang again at 8:49. Daniel, then Vanessa, then Patricia, then a number I didn't recognize that turned out later to be Gerald calling from a work phone, then Daniel again. 30 calls over the course of 4 hours. I counted because I am someone who counts things. The texts began around 9. You misunderstood the whole thing. We were testing you. It was a tradition. Emily, please pick up. Daniel has nowhere to stay. You owe our family an apology. Do you understand what you've done to him? Call before this destroys his reputation, please. I read each one carefully. Then I opened my contacts app and one by one, with the particular satisfaction of someone completing a task they've been postponing for too long, I blocked every number. Then I refilled my wine. The house was very quiet. It had been my house the whole time. I'd just been too busy managing everyone else's comfort to notice how much I liked the silence. Daniel was referred to the Cook County State's Attorney's Financial Crimes Unit in June on the basis of the documented account access attempt and a broader pattern of financial behavior Marcus had compiled over 2 months of civil proceedings. As of this writing, the investigation is ongoing. I am told these things take time. Nora's recording was shared. She shared it herself with my blessing by a guest who posted it on Twitter at 11:00 p.m. on the night of the wedding. By Sunday morning, it had 2.3 million views. By Monday, it was in the Chicago Tribune, framed as a story about financial coercion in marriage and the legal instruments available to protect against it. A journalist named Claire Huang, who covers financial crime for the paper, called Marcus for comment. He gave her a quote that was precise and extremely quotable. Vanessa lost her position at the marketing firm where she worked 3 weeks after the video circulated, under circumstances her former employer declined to detail. I won't speculate. What I'll say is that when you record yourself announcing, in a church, in front of 200 people, that a woman's salary should be supervised because women are emotional about money, you have made a professional document of your own character. Patricia, I'm told, stopped attending her regular church after members of the congregation began repeating her phrase back to her at coffee hour. Every woman in this family learns her place. She'd apparently said it to several women over the years. They all remembered. Marcus filed the prenup enforcement in civil court. The proceeding took 8 weeks. At the conclusion, the court confirmed what the document already said. The house on Meridian Street was mine, the investment account was mine, and Daniel's claim to any shared asset on the basis of the coercion clauses and the documented transfer attempt was denied in full. I celebrated by replanting the garden, which Daniel had let go patchy. I hired a landscaper named Rosa who knew what she was doing. She asked on the first morning what I wanted the space to feel like. I thought about that for a moment. Like it belongs to someone who intends to stay, I said. She nodded like that was the clearest instruction she'd gotten all week. She wasn't wrong. I am at the head of my own table, in the house I built, with my money intact, my name unchanged, and my peace finally, louder than every single lie.